Welcome to this Cycling Life Leadership Bites. I'm delighted to be joined today by Bernard Moerman. Bernard is a regular contributor to TCL. He's a former mentor, coach, former pro team director with many years of experience working with young talent. The unique thing about Bernard is that in his cycling life, before he shifted towards full-time transformational coaching, over a period of 2 decades, he worked with, I guess, almost 1,000 young, talented athletes who traveled to Europe with the ambition of starting a professional cycling career. Some of those athletes did move on to pro careers. Others went into other fields of endeavor, many of them entrepreneurs. Bernard, maybe you can just say a few words about yourself before we jump into today's topic.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. And I'm delighted, as always, to be part of this Cycling Life. And the two things I do mainly is help guys transforming from one job to another, and for sure in sports, and then try to inspire them, being a storyteller. So.
Right. Well, the topic we'd like to explore today, Bernardo, is this one of transformations, because for many, the transition from a professional sporting career to normal life can be very, very difficult. That's both for sportsmen and women. In your several decades of working with elite and professional athletes, why do you think that this transition is often so difficult for people?
Well, it's difficult for everybody. I think every big change includes a lot of challenges. But for sporters, and particular top sporters, it's even harder because they make more transitions. If you think about it, how kind of protected and pampered they are, some sort of, while they do their sports, because it's all geared towards getting the result. So the people around the sporter take away as many tasks or distractions, which is good for the sport. But once you need to make your transition, you come in a world that you don't know. Even your diploma that you got before you started your sport is now outdated. So there is not much you can relate on. That makes it extra hard for an ex-sporter or ex-top sporter to make the transition into the next part of his or her life.
Yeah. So I guess when we talk about sports people, and particularly sports people who do make it to the elite or professional level, there are these stages, right? I mean, they come from being a junior athlete. Already there is that transition of moving from being a junior in cycling, say under 23, into the senior ranks. Then they have this period in the senior ranks, as you've talked about, where they may be in a team. Many decisions are being made for them. They are to a degree pampered. But then we move into this phase, which you might say the late, senior phase of the career, where we're talking about pre-retirement. So this could be, say, 2 years, 3 years towards the end of a career, depending on which sport. But what do you think actually prevents people from thinking about life after sport, as they're moving through these different phases?
Mm-hmm. Well, there are several things. While they're in the sport, getting the results, they're so sucked into it that it is very hard to take time to prepare for the next step, because there's a lot going on. There's a lot of traveling, but also mentally, they're so used and trained to focus that broaden their vision is kind of contradicting. So that's one part where it is very hard. Another part is that with top sport and with success of top sport comes glitter, so to speak. Mm-hmm. You're wanted. And since you're wanted, people are doing even more for you. But the misleading factor here is that you might think they do it for you, where in a way they do it for this success you represent. So you think you're more wanted than you really are. They want your success, not necessarily you. And that is a very hard one. That is, when you start to discover that is a huge block. And because of the glitter part, for some people, the ego plays a role, meaning they're not thinking about the next step, what they're gonna do with their life, even if they're financially okay. There is still a life and you still want to have a certain value because you think in your sport you were valuable. You want to keep that. But there you need to make a complete new exercise. And for a lot of guys, that's a very, very, very hard one. Plus, like I said before, the diploma you got before, after your 10, 12, 14, 15 years of top sport, might be completely outdated. Even the job area that you were in before might be completely outdated. So there's a lot of brand new things. Plus, one other thing is during your career, most of the people became a family. First, they started alone, then they got a boyfriend, girlfriend, made a family, got kids. So your level of responsibilities did change also quite a bit. But since you were in that vacuum of getting the result, you were not so much aware about this. But now you need to make a huge transition. And it's not only you with your backpack, it's your family, which is another big, big, big hurdle.
Yeah. That's an interesting topic related to, I guess, skills and competencies, because as you've mentioned, when you're an athlete, particularly if you're good at what you do, you are recognized and rewarded and applauded. And one of the things that I've experienced in meeting, current and former pro athletes is that does build to an extent an ego that they believe that after their career they will be in demand. However, in my experience, when I've probed or pushed them on that, they haven't thought very deeply about what they might be in demand for. So what do you think's happening there? Because, many, again, athletes that I've spoken to, mostly in the cycling world, they expect that post-career, they'll be in demand, that people will be wanting them, but not really thinking through what they might be doing work-wise. Some of them go off and become soigneurs, or they go off and become DSs, director sportifs, or they stay in the cycling world. However, I've also sensed a bit of naivety even around that area, that they have an expectation that there'll be a demand for them in the world of cycling work after their careers. So what do you think is happening there? What is this naivety, or where is this expectation coming from that the world will provide, but not perhaps having thought deeply about how that will happen?
Well, it is not so much naivety. I think it's more a general point for everybody. Not too many people really start looking for their real talents and values. I mean, since you could ride your bike or you could play soccer, people brand you as a talented soccer player or cyclist because that is quick, visible. But everybody has other talents as well. And even in the normal world, you go to school and because of your competences, you get a diploma and then you get a job. But maybe you're talented in something else, but you're not looking for it because you had the competence to be whatever, or you had the talent to ride your bike. So that was it. But now I think it comes more and more visible that we really need to look, everybody, what are my talents? And you always have more than one. And your talents are always more visible or less visible because of the context. So the concept of the word talent is for sure something that every sporter that is towards a transition really need to go back into. What are my talents? What can I be passionate about? And because of aging, because of getting a family, you will discover that there are other talents you have. But that's an exercise, and that's confronting. Like you said, nothing is going to come for free, because when the people wanted you when you were doing your sports, they wanted you because of your results in your sports. So now you need to look, where can I get results in something else that I like doing? Because when you like doing it, time flies, then most probably it is a talent zone. And that is something you need to figure out. Everybody needs to do that. How many times do you see in business life, somebody does something for 20 years because he was competent, got diplomas, etc., but then he figures out, that's not what I want to do. And that's the same thing, but it needs an exercise and it needs some guidance to really start finding your talents. And then you can have a magnificent ongoing career in something else. That might be in your sport. It might be in something else. Might be, maybe you're a great inspirer that you don't even know. You were just, oh, I was the leader in the team. Yeah, but maybe you have really an inspiring talent to do that. So it's more than just having done it for 15 years. You can inspire, that's something else. Did you discover that for yourself? Did you really look for it? Because when you can inspire somebody in your sport, most probably you can inspire somebody in something else as well. So that's what you need to figure out, I guess.
Yeah. And I mean, it's interesting you mentioned, say, people in a corporate or a working life, that many people go through this kind of crisis. We call it a midlife crisis often, right?
Yeah.
They've been in a career for 20 years. However, for many professional athletes, this is not a midlife crisis. For many former elite or professional athletes, this is occurring in their late 20s or early 30s. So
Yeah.
it's almost like a midlife crisis, but almost like a third life crisis, because they do have often more than half of their work life ahead of them. So what's your thinking about how soon this thinking about post-sporting life should start? Because as you mentioned, and it's something that I've experienced also in conversations with professional athletes, is when I've raised this topic of life after sport, one of the things they've said to me is, look, if I start thinking about that now, it's going to distract me from the focus that I need on my training, my nutrition, my competition. So I'm going to put that aside, which I can understand for someone perhaps in their early or mid 20s. However, I've also had that conversation recently with a cyclist, a professional cyclist who's in his early 30s, and he's still not yet really thinking about what is coming. And I think for him, retirement maybe is only 2 years away. So in your experience, when should this process begin, and what should the stages look like?
Well, it should begin, yeah, even when you start doing your sport. Because think about this: you want to lead your life, not only live your life, but you want to lead. You want to be the self-leader of yourself, and part of leading your own life, being the self-leader, is looking to tomorrow. What will we need tomorrow? Even as a leader, a business leader, part of what you need to do is, what do we do tomorrow? What are the capabilities we need tomorrow? Where is it all going to go? It's the same with your sport. Even when you are so focused on getting the result, there needs to be some part of time that you use to think about tomorrow. And then in the middle of your career, tomorrow might still be being a professional sporter, but there comes a day that your physical abilities are not good enough anymore to get up the standards that you need. So what about that tomorrow? So that needs, the sooner it can start, the smoother it will be. I'm not saying the easier, but the smoother the transition will be, because at that moment you start to be in touch with the changing world. As long as you are in your sport, yes, your sport is evolving, but you're in that bubble. And I experienced that as well. When I was in cycling, you're so sucked into it. As soon as you stop I stopped with the team, you see that a lot of things changed without you noticing. And it's normal because you were so much focusing. So really take some time per day or per week to think about tomorrow. You don't need to be scared about it, but if you think about it on regular basis, you form your own ideas, you start checking who you really are. It's not only the results, but also, what do I do with results? How does that come into me? How do I cope with that? How do I cope with an injury? It might be different when you're 22 breaking your collarbone, or being 30 breaking your collarbone. And all those things you really need to pick up for yourself and see, okay, so you discover what you're made of in your head, so that you can start building on what's coming. And then for those people, as you said, in a way, most of the sporting careers, the active end at 35. So they have a whole life to go. But just think, if you're prepared, how much of a launching platform that is. even without the help of anybody else. And then you as a sporter can get some help, but you will get help when you show that there is something to offer.
Yeah, it's interesting what you mentioned there about help because I guess, again, one of the things I've experienced, and again, mostly in the world of cycling, is that teams, leaders, even agents seem very, very focused on the here and now, identifying talent, developing talent. But here, when I'm saying developing talent, developing the physical attributes of talent to win races, to win competitions. To what extent do you feel that there is a responsibility for leaders, for teams, even for sports agents, which many elite athletes have, to support talent, and do they actually have the skills that are needed?
Um, all the teams and all the organizations, if there is any support, it is like you said, to get the result. It's all result driven, especially the agents, because you're worth more for them the more results you get. And once you start talking about doing something else, meaning you won't get the result anymore, I'm not saying you're worthless, but you're not on top of their picking list anymore.
Yeah.
So
I mean, of course, I guess when we talk to really the top athletes, then the agents are looking after also endorsements and sponsorships. But for,
yes, but
certainly in the world of cycling, that's not 80 or even 90% of the peloton that
no,
we are talking about here.
and even for those top sporters, even those top cyclists, they are taking care of finances and maybe other endorsements or maybe getting them into a job in cycling. But how much help is there for the real human side? Not much. You only start to see that in the top sports and top teams in those sports, like in soccer, like in basketball. There you see that the teams start to, and the organizations start to understand that the well-being of the sporter forever is again helping that organization right now, but also creating a good image and stuff like that for everybody. But it's very limited. People, most of the top athletes are still, depending on themselves about what they're gonna do next, what they're gonna do later. There is no lot of help. Plus, it's the war on talent. So every energy that there is from the teams, from the agents, is to get the talent, to get the result. And as soon as the result isn't there anymore, you're not considered as a talent. So they don't. Then they look for the next one. That's how it works. It's brutal.
Yeah, which, and I mean, you use the word brutal, but actually the research shows also that there is a disproportionate representation of, the development of depression, anxiety, these also mental illnesses, which are often faced by athletes in making this transition. It's a well-researched phenomenon. So we're not just talking here about something frivolous. It is actually about someone's overall health and well-being in making what can be, for many of them, a very, very traumatic transition. So what would be your advice to an athlete who's perhaps in that sort of twilight phase of their career? They've got 2-3 years to go in a professional, whether it's football, cycling, whatever sport it might be. What would be your advice about what they should be doing right now to start this transition phase?
Well, the very first thing they need to find out is what, let's call it then, other talents they have. Definitely they have several talents, but then they need to see what am I really love, what do I love doing, what gives me energy. Those type of questions you need to ask. Obviously you can go to a coach, but there are simple things that you can start doing, because finding your talents and your values is not coming overnight. It's a process, and maybe talk with your spouse, stuff like that. Look where the situation of the children is. Where do you want to go? Start doing those things, because the sooner you start, the more you will get an idea and a clear vision, and that always gives you ease of mind. You start to know what's happening. You start to discover yourself. And for sporters, that might sometimes be very difficult, because once you're having success, it's a snowball, and you're part of that snowball. And since a lot of stuff is done for you, you're not even aware that this is temporary. It looks like it's going to go forever, and it goes like seamless. So you really need to realize, no, I need to think about myself, who I am, what can I do for my family, what do I like doing, and that is a process. And once you start doing that, then in your brain, it works differently. Then you start noticing things that from now on you call opportunities, or potentially opportunities, where if you don't have an idea who you are, your brain is not going to help you to direct to look at certain things. It's very remarkable. As soon as you start thinking about things will come up that you say, like, oh, this is strange. This comes up now. Well, it would have come up anyways, but you would not have noticed it. And it starts with finding out who you are. What are your other talents? And the mixture of that can get you, will show you things. And then it's up to the reciprocity, so to speak, like to pick up things. But that's, for the people I coach that do it this way, the very first thing I hear, it's like, we feel much more at ease. It's not like you need the elephant in one time. You can go in pieces, like start to figure that out. And for sure, when you can do that mid-career already, then let's hope you don't get too badly injured. Then there's still lots of times to go to do it at your pace. Where if you just at the end, it's like, oh, now what? Let's say a cyclist that all of a sudden does not get a contract anymore. Now what?
Yeah,
that's a hard one. But if you can be prepared, it's still tough to swallow that you don't get a contract, but at least you are already thinking about openings in other areas.
Great. Bernard, thank you very much for your wisdom, as always. It is possible. I mean, Alan Davis, our colleague at TCL, did an interview recently with Maeve Plouffe, who's one of Australia's top elite track cyclists. She's currently juggling an elite cycling career together with studies. She's doing a degree. So it is possible. We see people doing it, but clearly in that interview, she has clearly thought through these transitions that we've been talking about. So I recommend certainly for our audience to go and have a look at that interview. We'll share the link. If you have enjoyed this conversation, please do give us the thumbs up, and of course do subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have more than 30 interviews now with people from the world of pro cycling, with people from the coaching world, scientists, experts. So there's a lot of content there. Please do go and have a look at those other clips. Bernard Moerman, as always, thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to inviting you back again to TCL soon.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day.